Hello, BookTube, and this is another top 10 list. I put out a question or a poll on my community tab to say I had three, well, I couldn't change it, but I have three ideas for three top 10 lists. Now, one is my top favorite singers slash vocalists, my top 10 favorite songs, and my top 10 favorite albums. Jesus, get my tongue in correctly. Um, Now, 74% said yes, more top 10s, and 5% said no, no more. And 21% said, meh, don't really care. So either way, whether I put the meh, don't care in with the yes or the no, it's still a yes. So at least three times the number of people out of 38 votes said yes, more. So I will start with my favorite vocalist. Now, as with most of my top 10 lists, I find it very difficult to put them from 10 down to 1. I was able to do that with my top 10 science fiction series, and I'll be able to do it with one of these, but not with the singers. And it's 11 rather than 10. I couldn't really shave off another one. And as usual, only two are actually surviving. There's two singers that are alive at the moment. So we'll go for date of birth in the order of date of birth. And the first one on my list is Al Jolson. He lived from 1886 to 1950. Most people probably know him for the jazz singer, the so-called first talkie, which wasn't really true, but he did sing, and you ain't heard nothing yet is sort of the famous first lines in the film. And Mammy is one of it. Is another big one. I just thought he had a wonderful voice. Yeah, problematic of things that for today, but it didn't change his voice. I still really, really like his voice, and he sang everywhere from traditional jazz to popular songs. He did duets with everyone basically during the time, with at least several that are on my list here. So then we move on to Sophie Tucker, who lived from 1887 to 1966. And I really, really like her voice. She's sort of made fun of a lot, or has been. She was on, she showed up. With a, no, actually, was it her? Because I think the character, they used her in Airplane, I think it is. Or maybe I'm thinking, oh no, that was Ethel Merman. That's another great voice, is Ethel Merman. But Sophie Tucker, I really, really liked her voice. Sang tons of stuff during the 20s and 30s. And a big song during the 20s was King Tut. Really, I really, really enjoy her voice. She had a very, very deep, soulful type voice, but did a lot of popular songs. Bessie Smith, 1894 to 1937, just fabulous bluesy type voice. Oh, just amazing stuff. I used to have, they were box sets, Columbia, I think it was, sort of complete recordings in these oblong boxes that they were putting out with CDs in them. And I remember having a whole bunch of singers that they put out with that. Who almost got on the list here is, oh, I can't think. I'm blanking his name now. I just had it. Blues singer that Crossroads. Everybody will know who they are. He's a favorite of a lot, like Eric Clapton, and Eric Clapton redid a lot of his, like, people have been redoing his songs for a long time. I'm totally blanked, but if you go, look up the word Crossroads or a song, yeah, that's who I'm talking about. But he didn't quite make the list. Then we move on to Bing Crosby, 1903 to 1977. Now, I really, really like Bing Crosby's voice. He had quite a range as well. And he did mostly popular songs, but he started out doing jazz with Paul Whiteman, with Paul Whiteman's band. And there was a series, I don't think it was ever completed. They were putting out chronologically, it was Bing Crosby chronologically, every single thing that was left, all the takes, everything. And they only got up, I think, to somewhere in the 30s, maybe the early 40s, with I don't know how many CDs, because they had the alternate takes. And I kept wondering whether they were going to put out all the radio stuff too, because he did oodles and oodles of radio. And he was one of the first people to use actually recording tape, I believe, like tape to record for radio. And I think he invested in it as well. And he was one of the first to do that. So that's kind of interesting, just as a side. I should have just checked all that to make sure my memory is correct on that. But if I'm not, I'm sure somebody will shout at me in the comments. But yeah, I really, really and I liked his films too, the road films, and yeah. And I used to, as a kid, we used to watch his Christmas specials during the 70s. And I remember watching one with David Bowie showed up, and they did a duet of The Little Drummer Boy, or just a Little Drummer. But anyway, that song, and it was just, their voices just worked. Believe it or not, it worked. You can find a video on it on YouTube if you're interested. Okay, let's move on. Ella Fitzgerald, 1917 to 1996. What a wonderful voice for jazz and sort of popular jazz. I didn't really care so much of her scat singing, but her duets with Louis Armstrong, like, April and May, April and May? No, April in Paris. Oh, God, April and May. Yeah, that makes sense. April in Paris, and so forth, Tea for Two, and so forth. All the sort of Jerome Kern, songbook. Well, she did do a whole songbook of Jerome Kern and all those, which are just fabulous and standards. Doris Day, 1922 to 2019. I remember that's her sort of stage name. What is it? Keppelhoff or something like that was her real name. She started out in, I think, the late 30s in big bands, and continued through the 40s, and started putting out, I think, albums very late 40s, or songs anyway, recorded songs. And then she got into the films, the schmaltzy sort of films that were sort of love interest stuff, like very popular during the 50s. She was hugely popular during the 50s and 60s. She mostly sang very popular songs, but that sort of disguised her vocal talents. Because if you really, really listen closely and you listen to some of her early stuff, her vocal ability was just amazing. It was just so natural as well. But yeah, she's overshadowed by her acting and the schmaltzy songs that she did later, in the 50s and 60s. Sentimental Journey, I think, it could have been one of her very first recordings that she did with, was it Tommy Dorsey? I'm not sure, but one of the big bands, Tommy Dorsey's band possibly, or it could have been somebody else, but it's a really good rendition of Sentimental Journey. Then we go to Judy Garland, 1922 to 1969. sort of, in a way, a tragic life because child star, Wizard of Oz, and then studio. It's definitely a sort of story to sort of to sort of against the studio system, I guess you would say, because of the drugs and the dependency she had and the mental illness. But she just had a amazing voice. It matured, but I don't know. I really like a period in the 30s, really more than any other of a period of singing. But again, just a fabulous voice. And then we move on to Don Williams, 1939 to 2017. A country singer. Somebody to me could sing the telephone book. He just had such a natural, smooth voice, and anything he sang. Like I say, he could sing the telephone book, and he was always called, like, he was, I think, 6'4" or something like that, and his nickname was the Gentle Giant, because he'd usually just sit there, on stage, and just play an acoustic guitar and just effortlessly sing. And it's really weird. Not maybe it's not weird, but I found country music, I a lot of times don't think translates outside of North America, Canada, or the U.S. But Don Williams did. He was a huge hit throughout Africa. He would tour Africa, and he was a huge hit. Like I had housemates that were from Ghana and various other African nations, and they just loved Don Williams, and that's where I found out. I'm going, really? It's like, I just but it just goes to show that somebody with a great voice transcends borders, regardless. And then we go to Pat Benatar, the first one that's the first singer that's still alive on here. She was born in 1953. And I remember her first album, and the second album, just a range of voice, like the octave level she had and the power behind it for being so tiny. Like, she's like 5'1" or something like that, or 5'2". And she was so slim, like she was just so tiny, and this powerful voice that came out of it. And she's, she, what I call bubblegum pop, rock, bubblegum rock. But just a powerful voice, and she's gone on to do all sorts of other stuff. She did a sort of blues album called True Love, which just really showed off some other her vocal talents. And her and her husband, Neil Giraldo, are still touring and still doing things. And I think they might have, or she might have just finally got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which I think is well deserved. And then the next one is Dolores O'Riordan, 1971, and tragically in 2018 died in a London hotel. She started out in the Cranberries in the early 90s. Well, they actually started out, I think, the band in like 88, 89. But when I first heard her voice, it was just amazing. And it took me a while to get used to sort of the music a little bit. But her voice was so great, like anything she sang. And like people say, oh, well, she's going off key, she's going out of tune. And it's like, that's the thing, the emotion that she would bring to her voice. And there are a lot of other singers that can sing much more technically than she can. But they're flat. They have no, to me anyway, they have no body. They have no, feeling to their voices. It's just, yeah, technically good, but that's it. And when she, shakes on a voice, on a note at times, in live or even on recording, you could just hear the emotion behind. And I think that's where she put in this emotion so much into her voice. And it was a weird thing that I sort of found after she got married, and for a while there, she began to be sort of a comfortable, happy life. I thought her voice suffered a little bit, and it's like I hate to say that, but it's like as if when she was mentally suffering in some ways, her voice was just so much better. But that's a sad thing to sort of say. But there's one more, as I say, the 11th, which is Diane Birch. She was born in 1983. Her first album was called Bible Belt. It by far, I think, so far is the best that she's done. But it's really hard to pin it as the style. Its style is all over the place of musical styles. But she has such a strong, powerful voice as well. That's very natural, because when you listen to her live, she sounds like she did on the recordings, and you can't say that about a lot of singers. But yeah, there's my top 10/11 vocalists. And yes, you're right, there's only one, two, three male singers on here out of 11. And these are chosen by I'm not saying that they're the best technical or anything like that. They're the ones that meant more to me growing up and thinking back, and that I can listen to any of these singers at any point in my life that I've been able to. And I do have two other top tens, as I say. I think, what am I going to do next? I can't remember now. Which is the favorite songs, and like, can you guess any of the favorite songs or singers? Like, is there an overlap? And with favorite albums, is there an overlap? Well, you'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. And are any of these singers your top singers, or what would your top 10 be? And if anybody else, any other booktubers, I know it's not booktube, but any other booktubers want to, do this, I'd love to see what and the reasons behind their favorite singers. Thank you, booktube.